Love this podcast? Support it and sponsor today. Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details.
Did you know you can advertise on podcasts?
Don't act like you're not impressed.
Find out more at podvertise.com.au. That's podvertise with an s.com.au. Ozcast.
Here we are. Welcome to the Maker and the Drinker podcast. I am the drinker, Jared Walsh. If you haven't heard about this podcast before, it's about people and their love of wine. We're going to be talking about different wines. Alongside me, I'll be joined by John Retzis, who is the maker from First Drop Wines, one of the world's best wines. And we're not only going to be talking about wine, but more so finding out about the people who are actually consuming it with us, their passions, their industries, and how their wine journey started and led them to having a conversation with us. Join us. You can have a drink if you want while you're listening to it. It doesn't really matter what time of the day it is. I have a feeling you're really going to get a lot out of this. Let's do it. Cheers. The Maker and the Drinker podcast is proudly presented by Ozcast Network. A huge thanks to Andy and Liam from Ozcast, Australia's coolest podcast network, for not only helping me put this together, but also supporting and believing in some of my unique and crazy ideas. Trust me, this podcast network is growing rapidly. So if you're not on board yet, I highly recommend you do so. Whether you're interested in creating a podcast or listening to some of their library, to some of your favorite podcasts, I highly recommend you go to ozcastnetwork.com. Even better, if you want to associate your brand with some of the biggest podcasts, not just in Australia, but in the world, podvertising is something that you should really invest in and hear more about. This is one of the amazing things about podcasts is your message. You're going to get a guaranteed number of how many people you reach, but also the boys will go into more details about who specifically you want to target with your brand's message, and then they can help facilitate that. So there's no guessing, there's no estimation, there's a chance that your brand is going to be heard by this amount of people. It's all facts, and it's probably the most powerful way to connect your business to a consumer. So once again, ozcastnetwork.com, and of course, First Drop Wines. This podcast is all about wine, and I'm going to tell you more about that very soon, but the partnership and association that I have with John Retzis and First Drop Wines, it started as a friendship, and it continues to be that. And we've had a friendship based on wine, on football, and just two mates talking to one another about how we can share the journey of wine. If you haven't heard about First Drop Wines, it's firstdropwines.com. They've been around since 2004, the boys, JR and Matt. And if you haven't been to the home of the brave, that is their cellar door. It's in the Barossa Valley. These boys make wines with flavour, texture, and they like to say a splash of funk as well. And I can definitely attest to that. Their labels are incredible. And I'm not just saying it. This is the best wine I've ever had. It is ready to drink as soon as you open the bottle. Even better, the fruit is sourced from all vineyards around South Australia. So it's not just in the Barossa Valley, it's in the hills, McLaren Vale. They do service overseas in America, over in China, and different parts of the world. So if you haven't tried the wine, I highly recommend you do. They've got over 20 different wines, and they are all amazing. From something that you just want a bit of a quaffer and you want to go to the bottle shop and grab one. As you know, we're blessed here in South Australia to have so many wines at really good price, but they also do premium wines as well if you want to feel a little bit fancy. And the food, wow, the food is incredible. The tapas, it's been heavily researched over in Europe to find out how the chefs here in the Barossa Valley need to make the best tapas to service you and accompany your wine. Firstdropwines.com. They're on social media. I will put everything else in the show notes and the description. I think I've said enough. I reckon we should get into this episode. Okay, there's a bit to get through before we get to the first guest. There's a couple of questions I'm sure you have. So it's called The Maker and the Drinker. I am the drinker. Where is the maker, John Retzis? He's not available for this episode because I had to record it at 7:30 in the morning and we don't live together. But he will be present for the other ones. It's okay. You'll be very impressed by the guests I have on in his place today. I do have another winemaker on. And you might be thinking, why is there country music all over this podcast? And there's no big, long story. It's as simple as this. I started watching Yellowstone, the TV show with Kevin Costner, and I fell in love with it. It's in my top 5 TV shows of all time now, and I'm obsessed. and I want to go live on a ranch in Montana. I haven't taken into account the smell of all of the horse poo and what you need to do, like the physical hard labor, because it depicts a lifestyle of people who have money who live in Montana. But I just like the idea of that simple lifestyle. And if I can't do that there in Montana because of COVID, I'll just do it like in the Barossa Valley. So JR, I may just appear with a tent and a swag in your vineyards one day. Please don't have me arrested. Okay, there you go. We have crossed all of those things, and the questions have been answered. Let's talk about my first guest. And I can't really explain how this happened. I'm still pinching myself. It's unbelievable, and I'm so grateful to have had 40 minutes to speak to Channing Frye. And you might be thinking, Channing Frye, that name sounds familiar. Well, Channing Frye is a champion in more ways than one. Let me take you back to his early life. He's a former professional basketballer in America. He went to Arizona College from 2001 to 2005. In 2001, he was fourth team Parade All-American. He was McDonald's All-American in 2001. He was Pac-10 All-Freshman team in 02. First team All-Pac-10 04, 05, got drafted, and he played at the New York Knicks, the Portland Trail Blazers, Phoenix, Orlando, Cleveland, went to the Lakers for a bit and came back to the Cavs. He was in the NBA All-Rookie First Team in 2006, and more notably, in 2016, he was part of the Cleveland Cavaliers championship-winning team. And that's an amazing feat for anyone when it comes to professional sport, being an NBA champion. But even more so for the people who know who I am, you know I love sport. I didn't necessarily want to talk to Channing about sport because I wanted to talk to him about his other passions. And that's how I really became connected to him. He, in 2016, started a podcast with his teammate, Richard Jefferson, and their courtside television reporter for the television network in Ohio at the time. And she's now working for the Lakers for some of their television broadcasts, Ali Clifton. What they decided to do was record a podcast while they were traveling and preparing for matches in that championship winning run. And they released a podcast called Road Trippin', and it pioneered player-driven podcasts because this gave an insight from the player's perspective with no media agenda, no narrative, and no time constraints. So they sat there and they recorded it. And eventually they ended up getting on some of their teammates like Kyrie Irving, who we speak about. LeBron James came on the podcast. Australia's Matthew Dellavedova, Kevin Love, Iman Shumpert, Jordan Clarkson. All of these players came on, and other players from around the league, and influential people. And I became addicted to the podcast because it gave me an insight into these players' lives behind what we know them for. I've always been fascinated by understanding the player behind the athlete or the player behind the career. So this podcast connected with everybody. It blew up and I loved it. I then started following Channing even more. And it was so amazing to see not only the respect he had from his NBA colleagues and teammates in the community, but also everybody around him, just for the person that he is. And that is something which you'll hear in this podcast, or if you want to watch it on YouTube, you'll see that he's just such a warm, genuine person. And I felt like we were best mates. That's the amazing thing about it. I could have spoken to him forever. I just felt like he was a friend of mine, and that's the way he treated me. Regan and Doug, his representatives, were incredible to deal with. And the whole reason I got Channing on was to talk about his new life, and that was as a winemaker. He's got a new wine venture with a couple of his friends. It's called Chosen Family Wines. It's based in Portland in Oregon. They have a Pinot and they have a white. And I loved speaking to Channing about wine because he's a winemaker, and I wanted to respect the fact that he was Channing Frye winemaker and not Channing Frye basketballer. Yeah, there was some basketball stuff in there, but I intentionally wanted to talk to him out of a passion of wine and understanding how full on he was with the process, how passionate he is, and I can only wish him all the success in the world. He said on his podcast the other day, he's sold out 90% of the wine that they've made, which speaks volumes for everything about they do. So if you want more information about Chosen Family Wines, I'm going to put everything in the description of this podcast, their Instagram, their website, for Road Trippin' as well. If you haven't heard it, I highly recommend it. You can go to the back catalogue and listen to it and follow the journey of Richard, Ali and Channing and their guests. And I'll put the information about First Drop Wines as well in this too. Oh man, I'm going to go back and listen to this as you're listening to it because it was a journey. You can hear how excited and happy I was. This is at 7:30 in the morning, and the whole idea of the maker and the drinker was to have a glass of wine with my guest, and it was pretty difficult to do that at 7:30 in the morning because then there would be a real issue. I didn't. I wanted to. I needed to afterwards, and I did later on that day because I was just in such a state of shock that I managed to connect with Channing Frye. So let's do it. The maker and the drinker speaks to Channing Frye, winemaker from Chosen Family Wines. Channing Frye, I mean, there's so many introductions I could give you. I could say NBA champ, I could say podcast pioneer, but I'm proud to say Channing Frye, winemaker. Thank you very much for joining me, mate.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me. But I played with a couple famous Australians, Matthew Dellavedova, Andrew Bogut. It's one of my favorite, the pride and joy of the Utah Utes. Well, the number one pick in my draft.
Yeah, so to give you some context, where I'm based at the moment, it's 7:30 in the morning here in Adelaide, South Australia. So this is the hometown of Joe Ingles from the Utah Jazz. Yeah. We're about 7 hours away from where Delhi was born in Maryborough. And Bogut's just floating around somewhere in Australia at the moment. So you've got a good Australian history who are some of your former teammates. And you said before that you've been to Australia.
Yeah, so in college, we stayed out in Australia actually 21 days. It was one of the best trips I've ever had. We went down the East Coast, Sydney, Adelaide, we went to the Great Barrier Reef, went out there, and then our coaches would go wine tasting all over the place. So we would play games basically every 3 days. So we played 7 games. And our being in college, we had the greatest time ever. Everyone was nice in Australia. I love it. I'm not a big fan of spiders. And y'all have some of the biggest spiders I've ever seen.
Yeah, I know. So now because we're getting into like the warmer weather here in Australia, so my morning routine is I drop my daughter off at childcare and I go outside and I try to get rid of the redback spiders that can kill you with one bite.
Yeah, no, dude, that says too much. And then one thing I'll never forget is, so in America, like a little cockatiel is maybe this big.
Yeah.
Right? The white birds, they look like gigantic parrots.
Yeah.
In Australia, those birds are 2, 3, 4 feet high. And so I'm walking around and that's your version of a pigeon is a 4-foot parrot.
Yep.
That's walking and they're not afraid of anything. So it was amazing. Australia is like every animal is on steroids, like a snake, a kangaroo. I was the tallest on my team, and we went to the zoo, and this kangaroo was lying on the ground. So I went to go take a picture of it, like just stand next to it, and the kangaroo stood up and was as tall as me, and the zookeeper was like, you might want to back up from him. He's sizing you up. He's not used to people being his height. He's like the main guy. Yeah. So I said, you know what, bro? This is your stage. This is your cage, whatever this is all you. I don't want none of them problems.
Exactly. Some of them are friendly, other ones aren't. And the thing about South Australia, I guess, is that we have like these petting zoos where they just go, you know what, we're just going to open the gate and good luck. Like if one of them attacks you, you can go pat that goat if you like, but there's a chance it's either going to attack you or it might urinate on you. But you know what, if the kid has a good time, then who cares?
Exactly. And you know what? It's all good. They're animals. They're probably frustrated being cooped up. They don't have wine to drink.
Yes.
It's a tough life for them.
Let's move on to the wine because this is the reason that I want to speak to you. I was so excited to hear about the path that you've taken. I'm massive on people and their identity, and for so long people have probably identified you as being NBA player and basketballer. But for you to make this transition and adopt it over the past couple of years and find this love, a bit of backstory about South Australian wine. So in the Barossa Valley over here, we're really blessed. So the Barossa Valley is one of the most reputable wineries in the world. So it's one of the big wineries, and it's about a 50-minute drive from where I'm sitting right now. So, I mean, it's 7:30 in the morning, but I'll probably open one of these first drops in a second, which is totally fine. McLaren Vale down south is exactly the same. But I was speaking to the winemaker of this wine yesterday, and he was telling me that the Barossa Valley is not only one of the best in the world just because of reputation, but because we've got some of the oldest soil in the world. So our climate is more of a Mediterranean climate compared, like where you are in Oregon. It's your Pinots and stuff. It's a bit of a cooler climate with the altitude and the heavy rainfall. But to come over to South Australia, we're looking more at your Spanish or Italian kind of climate, which means the soil is that old. It's actually older than Europeans because there was so much disease which went through Europe that didn't affect Australia. So that's why in the Barossa, we really look at your Shiraz and your Cab Sav, and that's why we feel that we've got the best in the world, because it's a quick trip away. Right. But when you were saying you came to Australia when you were playing as a kid, like I'm sure you probably weren't at the stage then when you've made a transition into, hey, I'm going to start drinking wine, because that experience the first time is such a unique one for everybody. The first time you got to have a glass of wine and enjoy it.
Yeah, I think this is going to be funny. Is the truth is every time I have a glass of wine I haven't had before, or even if I've had it, I enjoy it like it's brand new. I think like there are so many variables that go into making good wine or making wine in general. And then each parcel of land is so different, right? Where the roots go, there's no picture to tell you what's happening. So the story behind how it's made, why they made it, what inspires them, all plays a part for me to love my new job, right? To love the opportunity to make a wine brand and a wine label, and to work with my different winemakers that are part of this company, to give respect to like the traditional methods, but to also challenge it due to our perspective, right? I'm a young African-American guy from Arizona, right? Phoenix, Arizona, and it's a desert there. So obviously there was not any grapes grown when I was growing up, and drinking a big red wine in the 130 degree heat just doesn't go together. And so now when I've gotten older, I've learned so much about wine and been inspired by people who have changed the game or done things so consistently, so awesomely for so many years. It's been it's been inspiring. I know I just said it, but I think every time I take a sip of something, even if I don't know it, like you sent me those wines before, and I was like, what are these? I've had Australian Shiraz before, but I tried it up to an American Syrah and was like, what? This is bananas. And, even though they're different names for people that don't know, it's basically the same grape, but it's just like so different. It's so unique. And so that's what makes every glass amazing.
Yeah, I find that interesting as well, because the ones that you'll get today, you've got about 6 different ones coming to you, and this one, the Mother's Milk, is one where it's their traditional standard wine. And then I had one which was a different vintage, and I actually asked the winemaker, I said, I don't want to sound offensive, but why does this taste so much better than the other one? He said, because South Australia over the past couple of years has gone through a drought. So because of the concentration of the grapes, you're going to get a lot more flavour. And you're right. I feel it's funny when you drink with a winemaker, or you are on a road trip and you've got someone from a different country who says, try this, or you're on a jet and they go, try this. It actually gives you an opportunity to have a conversation, and it tells a story about the wine. People use it as a status symbol, but they also use it to go, I'm proud of this because it's from my hometown, or someone recommended this to me, or I got it as a present. So it actually, I was reading one of the articles you did. You're right. It's a huge conversation starter to sit there and enjoy it and talk about what you're consuming.
Totally. I think it's a connector, right? And, I could be from, I am from Oregon and you're from Australia, yet we are connected through wine. And when I give somebody an Oregon Pinot, an Oregon Chard, or a Syrah, or something from Walla Walla, anything, depending on where I'm going, it is because I have a story for you that is like a respect thing. To me, it's like if I'm going to dinner with, my guy Doug, right? And Doug Sanders is my agent, he's my best friend. I've known him a long time. If I go to dinner with him, I'm always bringing him new wines to challenge his understanding of what his palate is. Right. So he may stick in his little realm of like, okay, I like Pinot, but I like this kind of Pinot. I may bring him something to explode his brain. I might bring him a Chilean wine. I might bring him something just because that's my guy. And I want to sit and talk to you. I want to be connected to you for those moments because, like I say in my articles and like I say just in life, we don't know how much time we have left on this earth. And so for me to spend these moments with you, I value them and I cherish them. And to have great conversation with somebody that you love and respect or that you want to get to know is amazing. And it's just like memories, liquid memories, man. It's like, hey, Doug, remember we had that delicious bottle of wine? Yeah. We went to Vegas. It was a little overpriced, but absolutely worth it because it went well with the, rabbit ragu that we had, and those are the kind of memories that I just fuel me to make sure that I'm constantly putting my soul into this. It's a business, obviously, but putting my soul into wine and a business. And I'm just humbled the fact that people have my wine, our wine, in the middle of their table, right? And I hope that when they drink it, their conversations are great and then they have great memories.
Yeah, it's fascinating you talk about the different cultures. I was in Shanghai last year, and to see how different people from different parts of the world consume wine is fascinating. So I went over there and I was actually sitting with the winemaker and he was handing out, I think, $400 bottles of red. But the Chinese don't drink for taste. They drink for consumption. So it's basically drink as fast as you can. And we're watching it going, just slow down, enjoy it. You go, come on, and just throwing it back. And we're thinking, you just got to stop here because you don't realize what you're doing. But for them, it was just consumption. So to see how every part of the world does it differently, it actually is a real education piece.
For sure. And I just got back from China a couple of months ago and I thought it was just me. I drink fast, right? I drink fast. I'm a big guy. I'm 7 foot. So I can throw down some beers. But I remember these guys who were 5'1", 5'2", were just chugging beers and chugging wine. And I'm like, I kind of like these guys, right? But I think it's different, but it's respected. It's like if you go to Italy, you go to dinner for 4 hours. Right? You may drink 6 different types of wine. You go to France, dinner is 4 hours, 5 hours. But just the different cultures, the fact that a bottle of wine is on all of them. Now, listen, if you purchase our wine or if you understand us and you want to support us, I don't care if you chug it, put a straw in it, freeze it. Now, obviously, there's a way I would like to enjoy it. But if you enjoy it that way, that's it. We don't care. Just as long as you have a smile on your face drinking it and appreciate how much time and blood, sweat, and tears we put into this project and how excited we are for the future of it.
Yeah, I want to get to Chosen Family and really lock down on that in a second. I wanted to talk quickly about the wine culture through basketball, like reading about CJ McCollum with the NBA bubble and taking his bottles of wine. And I really think I wrote on social media the other day to JJ Redick, and I like his podcast, but I'm like, I reckon Channing, Richard and Ali pioneered the player-driven podcast because I really think you guys did. And I'm a huge Road Trippin fan. And
thank you.
What I love about it is it actually, like, you were playing for the biggest team in the league in the world at that time and probably through the most stressful time, but the way that you could express yourselves creatively was to sit down with your friends and just to have a chat. And I think that in 2020 in the media, now I've until recently worked in radio for 16 years. I understand how the media works. We have a narrative, they set the agenda, the conversation. They always go in saying, here are the experts you need to listen to for this opinion. And it shouldn't work like that. So the fact that you guys took control of the message and what you did is you broke down barriers straight away. And I think, honestly, to hear what you spoke about, and it was such a light and shade podcast, and it still is, where you can have a laugh but then really lock down on some serious issues. And that's where I heard the influence that wine had on the podcast, because you were either on the plane or you were sharing a glass of wine. It's like those TV shows where you watch people drink and you're like, I need a drink. And I'm at the gym listening to Road Trip and I'm like, hold on, I should have a protein shake, but I feel like a glass of red. So yeah. It's a long-winded question, but I think that the wine culture in the NBA is really starting to grow.
Oh man, it's blowing up. And I think to give a credit to the players in the NBA now, they are so informed and so everything is accessible. Right? Where back in the day before obviously internet blew up, social media. Now a guy who buys a bottle from Nickel and Nickel or Jordan or Opus One can literally send a direct message to that owner and say, I love your product. Can I come taste at your tasting place? So there's no in between. There is like direct connections between wine and people who enjoy it. And I think more players are being more than just athletes and going after things that they love and really diving into, not just their hobbies, but things that they're passionate about. And so for me, the story behind Road Trippin was Allie and Richard were going to start a podcast on the Cavs, and Richard needed reps because Richard wanted to become a reporter. So he said, Channing, I want you to be our guest. And I said, I'm not doing it. I'm bored. He goes, I'll give you 2 bottles of wine. So I said, shit, I'm up there, right? I said, none of that cheap stuff either, right? And I'm joking, obviously. So I'm up there. It's all of us in this room with one microphone in a glass, and we had to tape it so the microphone wouldn't go around.
Yeah. And
so we're talking, and all of a sudden Kyrie comes in. And we're like, scoot over, Channing. So Kyrie, Richard, myself, Allie. So all of a sudden it became, we sat there, it was supposed to be 30 minutes. We were there 2 hours, right? And we're like, dude, let's do this again next road trip. So we did it again. All of a sudden, Kyrie comes again. Here comes Shump. Then we're like, hey, everyone goes, well, can we get a bottle of wine? So all of a sudden, we started bringing more and more bottles of wine for the guys to come, and then they would just talk about their life, and they would express themselves and say, like, this is what's really happening, or this is how I feel about this. Like, the whole thing with Kyrie, and I love that kid. I think he's amazing. I think he's intelligent. Before he said the earth was flat, he was really pretty even keel. And then after that, he found his voice. He found his truth. And I'm happy for him. I'm proud of him. And all of a sudden, there's been some amazing stories on that podcast that I don't think I ever would have had the opportunity to have. Derrick Rose, obviously LeBron, Kyrie, Kyle Korver, Tim Duncan. They had James Worthy on, I think. They've had so many players.
Bill Walton.
Yeah, Luke Walton, Bill Walton, Gilbert, right, which is one of my favorite episodes. Wine was always in the middle because it is a connector between people, right? And the wine that we had on there, Allie and I chose because I was like, well, does this guy like this kind of wine? Does this guy like this kind of wine? And most of the time it was in the afternoon, especially on set, but so it was like rosé. But still, wine is it is a interlocking thing, and it like lowers your temperature, right? And I'm talking about like your talking temperature. And for us on Road Trippin' and any show that I've ever tried to be on, I try to be as conversational as possible. I don't want a hot take. I may say something crazy here and there, but I'm not trying to make a hot take. I'm not trying to be famous based on my guesses for who's going to win, because most of the time I'm rooting for the guys that I like anyways, whether they win or lose. So, I think that's where media is kind of changing, but I'm glad to have been part of the original kind of player podcast and still doing it and evolving with the times.
Yeah, and I love it. And it's funny because I think players, and no matter what sport you play, I work with a lot of athletes here in Adelaide, and I love to get to know the person behind the athlete, because ultimately we're defined by our job so often. So to see that release, like it sounds so immature of me, but one of the moments I had to pull over my car and stop is when LeBron said, talking about peanut butter and jelly with him and D Wade, I think. And then he said, no, it's like poop and pee because you like farting and peeing because you can't do one without the other. And I'm like, hold on. And I had to go and try it at home, obviously, but to show that personality. So I think, like, for wine, for you, we've chosen family to go, people need a release and they need to express themselves creatively, because you work in such an intense job where you don't want to be high school, college, former pro, and then go, now what? Like, so you actually have a life and a family outside of your job like everybody does. So I guess we've chosen family. Is that really an important thing for you? First of all, I love the name and the meaning behind it, because I think a wine label is an ability to express yourself creatively. And it's like when people take so much time naming their boat, like you actually put thought into it and there's a story, and with the title. So for you, was this just an easy transition to go, I've got an opportunity to do something I love, but get really hands-on with the creative process of making the wine, not just associating my name with it?
Yeah, no. The two guys that I work with, one of them, Jake Gray, who we're actually in an office right now, going over our plan for the year, going over what's happened the last week. We launched last week. So it's like when Jake came to me with this opportunity, when Jake and Chase came to me with this opportunity of like, let's make a wine brand together. You have the bug. Let's do something different, right? Let's sit down at the table. And we're already friends. I told them I want to be part of every process other than the actual winemaking. Like, that's Chase's realm. He's a genius. He's our winemaker. And obviously I'm there a lot of days. But for me, I also respect him enough to give him his space. I trust him enough because I bought his wine for the last 6 years, seen how he's evolved as a human and as a winemaker. And then the people that we are going to work with in the future, I was there with my two youngest daughters and my mother-in-law. We picked grapes to make bubbles. So we're making bubbles in 3 years. I was there when they brought the grapes off the truck for our Syrah, which is coming out in 6 months, right? And then in 18 months. So for me, I told them, I don't want to do this if I can't be part of every process. The label and the name is a representation of us as a group of guys who are constantly evolving and growing, but that appreciate our relationship when you're sitting across the table, eating and drinking and breaking bread with people. Living in Portland is a big wine and food restaurant scene. And so we always, before COVID, we would love going out and love going to pool parties and at my house and then bringing their kids over and us just being around each other. And so, not everybody has the luxury of having their family with them, their actual family with them. So the people that you spend time with, to me, and my motto in life is that's who your family is the people that are going to support you and love you, but challenge you at the same time and hold you accountable. So for me, all of us come from different walks of life, but if we can share some singular moments, right, with each other, it's going to motivate us to become better for each other, right? If we can create with all the hecticness that goes on outside of the house for like 1 hour, for 2 hours, for 30 minutes, if we could just share laughs and joke and smile, it's going to recharge your empathetic battery. And so even the logo, like, it is a C, everyone asks, there are 3 C's and a W. So it's chosen. So Jake, Chase, and myself. And then the W is wines, but there's all 3. But it's a broken circle because that circle is going to constantly expand. We're going to expand as a business. Our families are going to expand. Chase is a newlywed. I have 4 kids. My kids are grown up. But for me to have them in every part of this, including my wife, my mother-in-law, my best friends, has been everything. And so it's like created such a bubble of love, but a bubble of motivation, and not let them down and to not let me down, and to not let the people who support us down. Because, when people say, why do you do it? I'm like, I've never had a chance to be creative, right? Basketball is not, for the most part, basketball is very cut and dry. I can be creative, but I'm restrained by a court. Excuse me. With Chosen Family, I'm not restrained by anything other than our business practices, which we're getting right now. But the juice is delicious. For people who say, well, I don't like Pinot, give ours a try. For people who say, I don't like Chardonnay, give ours a try. I promise it's different. It's delicious, and it's made us at some of the highest quality that we could get, made from somebody who's already an established, very good winemaker.
Yeah, I find that as well when you go wine tasting, and my wife's pregnant, so she's the designated driver. So thank you. So we go, I've got a 4-year-old daughter and another daughter due in January. But the great thing is we go wine tasting, and as you said, when you go wine tasting and someone says, hey, try the Pinot, sometimes people go, no, I'm not a Pinot drinker. And that's probably one of the toughest barriers to break, because you need to go, well, hold on. Like you mentioned in an article, it is about trust. And it's like, well, trust is just try it. Like, I'm not going to be offended if you don't like it, but give it a try, because without doing that, it's not like the wine's going to make you sick. You try it, and there's a fair chance that you are really going to like it. I had my father-in-law is a big wine guy, and I find I'm a good wine drinker, but I think we're so blessed here in South Australia and over in the States, there's lots of good wine, but I can't tell the difference between a $50 and a $500 bottle yet. I still can't. Yeah. I think it's hit and miss. And he came and said, hey, try this bottle of wine. It's worth, almost $1,000. And he took the cork out and it literally smelt like dog shit because something had happened. And this is my father-in-law. So I'm trying to go, yeah, I love your daughter. I love your granddaughter. The wine is shit. But are you at that point where you could be blindfolded and you could tell which one was the expensive one and which one wasn't?
Sometimes. It just depends. But I think there are amazing wines. It just depends on, is the $20 bottle wine, has it aged, right? Or the $100 bottle of wine, who makes it? And was that an off year? Was it, did it rain too much? And I think, for me, I almost don't want to know sometimes because I want to judge it how it should be judged, right? In my mind, do I like this? Whether you like it or not, the price should not matter. No offense, within reason, right? You shouldn't like $4,000 bottles of wine every night, but not all of us are sheiks and stuff. So for me, I just appreciate if you can make a delicious wine for $20, listen, I'm going to drink it all day. But if you make a wine for $100, I want to know why it's $100. I want to go there. I want to see. I want to know why it's special. I want to know if it's a unique taste. But if the $20 bottle of wine and the $100 bottle of wine taste the same, I would more likely tend to always buy a case of that $20 bottle of wine.
Yeah. How much pressure was that though when you're on road trips and you developed a culture with the wine team at the Cavs to go, hey, bring a bottle of wine onto the plane? Because you would have players who obviously are on big salaries and can afford it, but then you'd have players that go, hey, I know nothing about wine. I'm a beer drinker. I just want to bring something. So there's actually, I think it becomes pretty fun amongst the players where you just have a laugh if someone brings a crappy bottle.
Yeah, well, everybody started to, so it started to be, cabs and rosés. And then all of a sudden I said, listen, I don't know that much about cabs personally, right? I love them. I appreciate them. But what I know is the Northwest. So I started bringing Pinot Noirs, Chardonnays, Syrahs, Rosés. I started bringing bubbles, champagne. And I started putting the Northwest of America on the map. Delhi started bringing some Shiraz. Kevin started bringing, he's a big cab guy, so started bringing cabs. Braun started bringing Italians. Yeah. Kyle Korver started bringing Pinots from California, which he loves. He lived in Santa Barbara. So everybody was getting a taste of stuff, and the price didn't matter. It was only the taste. Yeah. And so certain guys would say, oh, I like this. What's this? Oh, it's a twist off? I didn't even know. This is delicious. Or, oh my goodness, how much is this? Don't open that yet. We're going to eat it at dinner. It's $1,000. You're like, we're about to drink that on a plane in a red cup? It's amazing. But it became something where you would put on for your own city and your taste and see who you could bring over to your side. Try this, Langlo Pinot Noir. Oh, I like this. This is my guy. You should go get some of his wine. Oh, you like this? I'm part of the club. So that conversation started to really bring us around and bring us together. So I guess if I'm going to have you over for dinner, you come to Australia, you come into Adelaide, and I say, Channing Frye, you've got the chosen family, or I want you to bring a bottle to me. We're going to have a beautiful steak. I've got some Argentinian chimi sauce I'll put over the steak with some roast potatoes. My wife has cooked. My daughter's in bed asleep, and it's wine time. What are you bringing? First of all, and this comes from my two partners here, we start with some champagne. Obviously, boom, right? Always start with the champagne. I told you, we're big drinkers. Then, of course, we're going to get the chosen family Chardonnay, which I think is next level, right? After that, right, because you have those potatoes. I don't know if you put the potatoes on there with a little Parmesan cheese, a little appetizer.
Rosemary from the garden as well.
Exactly. And then for me, because you do live in South Australia, I would actually go get a Syrah from the Rhone region, right? And something old world to hang up with that steak, something with a little pepper. But that's kind of what I've been drinking. It's what I drank last night. That's why it's on the top.
You taste it.
Yeah, I can for sure taste it. And what's crazy about those wines is I'll drink wines 2, 3, 4 days, right, until it's bad. So I'll take a glass or two, put it down, take a glass or two, put it down, and then see what happens in the evolution of that wine, right? Especially old world wines. They're like these older winemakers, all these older grapes. It's like just the evolution. It's like, wow, I didn't know it could taste like that. Or the pepper completely disappeared. And that's what's fun about it. So I would open up the wine, all the wine. We would have a sip at the beginning and then wait an hour. And then we would talk about how they changed. And then after that, we're going to your cellar since I just brought you 3 bottles of wine.
I love that. And before I let you go and wrap this up, I obviously sent you over some South Australian wine. There's more coming today. Could you tell the difference in the contrast? You briefly mentioned it before, but what I love and I wanted to know about Chosen Family is because here the First Drop Wine guys here, they've got their vineyard in the Barossa Valley, but they're also expanding their business to go to all different regions so they can have that vast majority. So could you taste the strong boldness of what you had?
For sure. I think for me, and just remembering, obviously I had the mother's milk. For me back then, I had only had so much other wines like that. So I could tell that it was very, very different in like a delicious way. I don't think enough Australian wines get the love that they deserve, especially when it comes to the media. And I even talked to some Australian guys, some guys that have played in Australia, just about maybe making a trip once Corona is over or settles down and just going out there and learning. And you know, like I said, based on our business model, we're not just one vineyard, right? We have a separate person and winemaker that does our Syrah. We have a separate winemaker and vineyard that does our bubbles. We have a separate winemaker and a vineyard that does our Pinot Noir and Chardonnay from the special AVA in Portland. So for us to go out to Australia and to create relationships and learn and grow is something that is within our board of, you know, our future board of what we want to do. So it's been awesome to just learn and grow. And, you know, you're inspiring me to go out and get more Australian wines and learn the different tastes.
Yeah, awesome. Tell us where we can we access your wine here in Australia, or if we were traveling to the States when we're allowed to, can you just pass on the website details and stuff?
Yeah,
more
website. Right now we are a e-commerce brand, which is wild because it is Corona. We don't have a tasting room. So our tasting room is our website. And so right now we're constantly evolving and growing and trying to make this as seamless as possible for people to get our wine. So we just appreciate everyone going to chosenfamilywines.com. And then I actually don't know that question. Nobody's tried to get wine from Australia.
No, that's okay. That's okay.
And then on Instagram, if you can go to Chosen Family Wines, you're going to stay with us because even if you don't support us when it comes to the wine, to follow this journey with 3 guys that's starting with 3 friends is going to be number one, funny, because wine is also hilarious and fun, but it's going to be amazing to see how we grow and how we evolve in our taste and where we go. And even if you don't necessarily have the opportunity to get our wine, whether it's sold out or you just can't, there are the other places that we're working with that should also get supported because they do such amazing, amazing stuff.
Yeah, awesome. I was going to say, if the other boys are there, I'm happy to email Reagan and yourself and connect you with the winemaker. So here in Australia, because he obviously is one of the best winemakers in Australia. And if you guys wanted to connect and talk wine whenever, his name's John Retsis and he's a close friend.
Yeah, email it away.
Yeah, so he can, and if you enjoy the wine, whenever you want more, please don't hesitate to ask and we'll send it over because it's a brilliant journey and you're going to get, I think, 6 bottles, but there's so many different ones and he makes lots of different ones. So please don't hesitate to get in touch.
Yeah, how did you send wine from Australia to here?
So he's got a distributor in America. So he's actually got, I've got the details here. He's got a distributor in California.
Oh, okay. So, we'll talk about it. It's just we've had people in England and Australia and South Africa asking for our wine. So we're a small brand right now, right? Minuscule e-commerce brand. So we're trying to figure out how to get wine to everyone and anyone who wants it.
Yes.
Because we think we make an amazing product and we don't make that much to a point where if you're willing to pay for the shipping, we'll put it in a box and give it to you.
Yeah, and I'm going to do that. I think I'll 100% do that because I want to support you guys as well. And I think you've been so accommodating. Channing, thank you because you've taken the time to have a chat, and I love how available you've been, not just via, we connected via social media, which has been amazing. And I tell you what, mate, it is the biggest challenge in the world to find Channing Frye jerseys online to send over. I contacted the Cavs store. They're like, sold out. I contacted China for a dodgy one. They're like, no, sir. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to buy a couple of Road Trippin T-shirts and ship them to you better. But, mate, this has been an amazing conversation about wine. And thank you so much, man. Good luck with everything. I'll be promoting it as much as possible. And I love the story behind it. I love the fact that you've been so involved in the winemaking process, and you can see how important that is, mate. Take care of your family.
You have a great day. Congrats on the baby.
Yeah, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time, mate.
Well, see ya.
Love this podcast? Support it and sponsor today. Simply head to AuscastNetwork.com for details.